The fastest way to kill a TED Talk is to be generic, which would sound something like this. Today, I'm going to talk to you about women power. Cliché, huh? So before I came up on stage, I decided to ditch being generic and do 3 things instead. Number 1, I'm going to make this very specific and challenge the current narrative of gender equality, which believes there is only one way to get to the answer. Number 2, I'm going to make it controversial and show you how there has been a continual progression of women for centuries in countries and cultures which are not necessarily the first places you think of when talking about gender equality. India, Asia, Africa, Middle East. Number 3, I'm going to make it personal because I am a woman. Not women. I'm not anyone's other half, better half, or lesser full. I am a woman. Let's start with my start, shall we? India. Isn't it amazing how some of the greatest inspirational stories are found in the most unlikely places? How they're not sold, but told. How they're not funded, but found. Closer to home. Or shall I say, at home. This is my late grandmother, who is perhaps the first rousing rebel I knew of. She campaigned against her own husband in favor of his opponent in the local elections. Can you believe that? This is a woman born in 1920s colonial India. She took the stand to not support her husband because of his horrendous performance in his previous tenure. My own mother has not been any different. Fiercely independent working mom who, among many other things, chose not to take my dad's last name. I'm talking about a household, guys, where girls are raised to say, you can, you do, you will. If at this point in time you're thinking, oh, she must be cut from the same cloth, don't get your hopes too high, because I am a recovering perfectionist, recovering control freak, recovering tiger mom. Don't take my word for it, just ask my kids who are left to suffer the same shit, different day exchanges. But I can tell you this. I have never felt unimportant as a girl or as a woman growing up in India. Never. You see, patriarchy and matriarchy has coexisted in Indian society for ages and still continues to. Growing up in a Hindu home, I have watched male and female gods and goddesses be worshipped indistinguishably. The gods of power, wealth, and wisdom are all female. Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Parvati. We venerate a Draupadi who had 5 husbands and rebelled against her family as much as we revere a Sita who is the epitome of loyalty and dedication to her only husband Ram. And with so many gods and goddesses, the idea of binary does not consume us. What works for us is our infinite forms of worship. And what is beautiful is I can be any ist or be part of any ism and still be part of the rich culture and heritage that I belong to. And my culture embraces abortion. Here's another cliche. Arranged marriages, which is what people think how every Indian gets married, right? You, congratulations on your wedding. I hope you end up liking each other in 10 years. But history actually tells of a concept called Swayamvar, where the princess chooses her husband from the royal court filled with suitors based on skills, strength, and intellect. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the earliest edition of Bumble. Don't go on judging me now, I'm not on it. Well, not yet. Back to the point, gender equality is not a Western fall, and we've had empowered women for centuries in unlikely places. Let's take the example of Middle East, where people think women power is elusive amidst demands from the Western media to change the social contracts. Well then, you clearly haven't heard of Queen Nefertiti, who was the most powerful queen of ancient Egypt and has the largest number of depictions along with her husband. Some show her smiting her opponents, others proudly riding her chariot, both unusual and progressive for a woman at the time. Let's move to Africa. Who could imagine that Ethiopia had a matrilineal descendancy to the throne, and up until the 9th century, there were 21 queens who ruled Ethiopia. Queen Shanak Daketo ruled as the ruler, not as a queen to her king or the queen mother. She was dressed in armor, was battle ready, and her husband was her consort. Intimidated? Moving on to China next. One of the most powerful women in Chinese history was Empress Cixi, who rose from being a concubine to the regent of China for 50 years. Let's jump to Sri Lanka, which way back in 1960 had the nerve and the spine to elect the first female head of government, while in the West, we were still celebrating the granting of voting rights to women. Switzerland here allowed our women to vote only in 1971. Now, girls tend to be just as good as the boys when it comes to STEM fields. But you didn't think that either, did you? This is Miriam Mirzakhani, who won the Fields Medal, which is the equivalent of the Nobel Prize in mathematics. She was Iranian. And coming back full circle, India recently elected a tribal woman as the president of the largest democracy in the world. And in the US, we are still struggling to elect a woman president, let alone an underprivileged one. Let me make this clear once and for all. Gender equality is not a Western notion, and it did not have its origin here too. It would be audacious to pretend that the Western society are responsible for women power movement. There have been innumerable women who have led noteworthy lives, but we've never heard of them. Partly because they chose to remain in the background, and partly because the male writers of the time preferred to ignore them in their mentions. Let me ask you this. When I say Cleopatra of Egypt, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Well, apart from Liz Taylor, which was really good, right? You think of this alluring beauty who was hell-bent on having affairs with Roman rulers, right? But there was a lot more to Cleopatra than the sultry seductress she's portrayed to be, who was bathing in camel milk. Oh wait, actually, was it donkey milk? Either way, I can tell you today, it's not available to be purchased off the shelves in the supermarket, and if you're wondering how do I know because I tried. Hold on, we're just warming up here. What about the movies, where this is further endorsed, right? How many DC or Marvel movies can you think of with male superheroes? Come on, time for audience engagement. Just shout out some names. How many superheroes, male superheroes? Iron Man, Superman, Spider-Man, go on. Batman. Ant-Man, for God's sake. How many women superheroes can you think of? You see where I'm going with this? For the hundreds of movies on gifted men like The Beautiful Mind and Stephen Hawking, we just don't have enough on Marie Curie's. Which takes me to my second point, which parrots the belief that there is only one way to the highway, my way. Not true, right? You know, I think the best stories are lived examples, which is why I love to talk about Saudi Arabia, which is often written off as ultra-conservative and closed off. But if you look at the change and the pace of transformation in the kingdom in the last 5 years, I think it is nothing short of unprecedented and mind-blowing. I see you, and I invite your curiosity. I invite your skepticism. I've worked in the kingdom for the last 5 years. I've lived there as a woman of Indian origin, as a practicing Hindu, as a very vocal advocate of women's rights, and as someone who walks around freely with the wind blowing through my hair, matched only by the winds of change sweeping through the kingdom. Let me ask those of you in the room, how many of you knew that the guardianship is actually dismantled in the kingdom? Meaning, you can't just drive, but now you can live, travel, and work alone as a woman. How many of you knew that gender pay gap is actually criminalized in the kingdom? And that's not something a lot of us in the Western world can stake claim to. That is change, guys. That is change which is happening on the ground. That is change we wanted to see, and it is being seen. Look, was the past horrendous? No. Is the present perfect? No. Is the future fantastic? I don't know. But what we do know is this is not a vertical split between East versus West, men versus women, or them against us. This is also not a movement or a clarion call such that what works for you should work for us. There are multiple ways and means to progress towards the same singular goal. And that might sound conservative to someone who does not understand the culture it originates from. Progress on gender parity needs cultural sensitivity to frame debate correctly. Also, the so-called standards and criteria for measuring anything and everything, it's a futile exercise, right? There is ice in the Alps and there is ice in the Himalayas. But it's easier to ski in the Alps compared to the Himalayas. Simple. Equality is not about being identical. You don't have to be equal to be considered equal. You don't have to compete to be complete. Progress on gender parity doesn't have to be a straight line or a linear progression. Why can't it be a tangential arc that still contributes to the geometry of societal design? And now, I'm going to get personal. The women before, the women now, and the women after. They are not a success story because they are women, because they represent women, or belong to a community of women. Let's stop communalizing her success. Her achievements are her own. Just like Steve Jobs' achievements are his own, or just like Elon Musk's success doesn't mean success for men all over the world, right? When a man is successful, he's never reminded of his gender. A woman, on the other hand, is reminded of her gender every time she wins. Oh, let's celebrate the success of this woman as success of human beings, of mankind. And oh, let every man rejoice in the success of this woman. No, no, no. I am charting my own success story, and I want to contribute to the benefit of mankind, not as a gender, but as a stakeholder. I'm a woman, not women. We're not a community of women, so don't communalize my success. I know what I want, and I will get what I want. So don't genderize me, and definitely don't womanize me. Finally, I don't want to hear about the glass ceiling one more time. Yes, the glass ceiling exists. Yes, it is a thing, just as candy floss is a thing. But if your aim is to get to the top, I say forget about the glass ceiling and take the elevator instead. Or the escalator. Or you know what, take the stairs and get your 10,000 steps while at it. But get to the top. And when you get there, remember to send the elevator down. And I promise to do the same whether you're a man, a woman, or however else you identify as. And this is not just as an act of courtesy. It's because that's exactly how I and many others like me got here. 25 years ago, 10,000 kilometers away from India, growing up, having never heard about gender parity, with a single-minded determination to achieve what I set out to, unmindful of the obstacles. That is what I want to tell the women of the world. Don't be a gender. Be an airbender. That is the real power. Duck, jump, sidestep obstacles. Be mutable and pursue your passion with a determination, throwing to wind caution and discrimination like every woman achiever before you and after. Nothing can give us emancipation. The liberation has to happen within. You're not someone's other half, lesser half. You are just two indistinguishable, equal parts of one. Thank you very, very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very, very much. One more time for the benefit of the people at the back. Say it with me. I will change the world, but not as a gender, but as a stakeholder. I will change the world, not as a gender, but as an airbender. Thank you.